The massive simulation chamber of the Intergalactic Survival Academy hummed with energy as the final preparations for the Predator Avoidance game were completed. A crowd of cadets from various species across the known galaxy gathered in the observation area, their voices a cacophony of different tones, clicks, and vibrations. Among them stood Maya Flint, the sole unaugmented human representative in her class, her back straight, despite the weight of knowing what was to come. The Academy, nestled in the outer rings of the Centauri system, had been established as the premier training ground for survival specialists who would serve on exploration missions to uncharted planets. Its reputation was built on a curriculum that merged advanced technology with biological intuition, pushing cadets to their limits through increasingly complex simulations. The Predator Avoidance game represented the pinnacle of these challenges, a final exam that separated those who would graduate into the elite ranks from those who would be relegated to support roles. Maya watched as her classmates checked their equipment. Most of them were handling personal cloaking devices, sleek, advanced pieces of technology that bent light around the user, rendering them nearly invisible to most detection systems. The alien cadets had been assigned these tools as a matter of course, their species' natural abilities complemented by the Academy's technology. "Cadets!" The voice of Instructor Arthun boomed through the chamber, silencing the chatter. The tall Andromedan skin shifted colors as he spoke, a natural communication method that emphasized his authority. Today's examination will test not only your technical proficiency, but your instinctive survival capabilities. The simulation environment has been calibrated to include 3 distinct biomes: dense jungle, swampland, and highland plateau. Your objective is simple: avoid detection by the Predator AI for 6 hours. Maya felt the familiar knot tighten in her stomach. 6 hours. 6 hours of being hunted by an artificial intelligence designed specifically to find and tag prey. The AI learned from each encounter, adapting its hunting strategies with ruthless efficiency. It was the closest thing to facing an apex predator without the risk of actual death, though failure carried its own kind of death for a cadet's career prospects. The Predator AI will utilize visual, thermal, acoustic, and vibrational tracking. Arthun continued. It will become more aggressive as time progresses, with additional hunting protocols activating at the 2-hour and 4-hour marks. The final phase will incorporate complete darkness conditions with enhanced predator sensing capabilities. Maya scanned the room, noting the confident postures of the other cadets. Most of them came from species with natural advantages: the Rissians with their thermal regulation, the Vexorians with their ability to alter their skin pigmentation, the Kaltorians who could remain motionless for hours without fatigue. And then there were those like Rin and Kor, twin cadets from the Proxima system whose slight frames belied their technological prowess. Their cloaking devices were rumored to be modified beyond standard specifications. "Now, for your class designations." Arthun's voice cut through Maya's thoughts. "Based on your previous performance metrics and species capabilities, you have been sorted into 3 categories: advanced, standard, and primitive." The word primitive hung in the air like a slur, and Maya felt her jaw clench. She already knew where she would be placed. Advanced class will utilize full-spectrum cloaking and environmental manipulation tools. Standard class will have basic cloaking and limited terrain adaptation equipment. Primitive class. Arthun's gaze fell directly on Maya. Will rely on fundamental survival techniques without technological augmentation. A ripple of murmurs spread through the gathered cadets. Maya caught the smirk on Sarek's scaled face. The reptilian cadet had made no secret of his disdain for humans and their obsolete biology. "Cadet Flint," Arthun addressed her directly. "As the sole representative of the primitive class, you will enter the simulation first. You will have a 30-minute head start to establish your position before the other cadets enter. This accommodation is provided in recognition of your natural limitations." The condescension in his voice was barely disguised. Maya nodded curtly, refusing to show any reaction to the insult embedded in what was framed as consideration. "Your equipment allocation is as follows," Arthur continued, gesturing to a nearby technician who approached with a small canvas bag. "Standard issue utility knife, water purification tablets, fire starter, and basic medical supplies. No technological aids, as per primitive class designation." Maya accepted the bag without comment, weighing it in her hand. It was pitifully light compared to the advanced gear being distributed to the other cadets. From the corner of her eye, she saw Rin and Kor receiving their sleek cloaking devices, the twins handling them with practiced familiarity. "The simulation begins in 15 minutes, Arthur announced. "Prepare yourselves and report to your designated entry points." As the group dispersed, Maya felt a presence beside her. It was Rin, one of the Proxima twins, his elongated features set in what passed for sympathy among his kind. "Tough break, Flint," he said, his voice a melodic hum. "Being classified as primitive. But perhaps it's for the best. We wouldn't want you injuring yourself with technology beyond your comprehension." Maya met his gaze steadily. "I appreciate your concern," she replied, her tone neutral. "Though I wonder how well you'd fare if your cloak malfunctioned in the swamp." Rin's expression hardened, almost imperceptibly. "A true advanced species always has contingencies," he said, before moving away to rejoin his brother. Maya turned her attention to her meager supplies, methodically checking each item. The knife was solid, at least. Good carbon steel with a serrated edge on one side. The water tablets were standard issue. Nothing special. The fire starter was a basic flint and steel set. Inefficient but reliable. The medical kit contained antiseptic wipes, pain relievers, and a roll of compression bandage. No GPS, no communication device, no thermal regulator, no camouflage net. Nothing that the other cadets would consider essential for survival. But Maya had something they didn't. Something the Academy consistently undervalued despite its effectiveness. She had grown up in the wilderness preserves of Earth, the daughter of rangers who had taught her to move silently through forests, to read animal behavior, to become part of the environment rather than imposing herself upon it. She understood the predator-prey relationship in a way that couldn't be programmed into a simulation or augmented with technology. She approached her designated entry point, a simple archway leading into the massive simulation chamber. Beyond it, she could see the edge of a dense jungle, its foliage so detailed that it was indistinguishable from the real thing. The Academy's simulations were renowned for their accuracy. Every leaf, every insect, every patch of mud was designed to replicate actual conditions. "Cadet Flint," the monotone voice of the system AI announced, "your simulation will begin in 30 seconds. Please step through the entry point to commence." Maya took a deep breath, centering herself. She tied her dark hair back tightly, then rolled her shoulders to loosen them. As she stepped toward the archway, she heard Sarek's voice from nearby. "Taking bets on how long the human lasts," the reptilian cadet said, loudly enough for her to hear. "I give her 2 hours, maximum." Maya didn't turn around. She simply walked through the archway, the sensation of passing through the energy field that separated the preparation area from the simulation, causing a momentary tingle across her skin. The humid air of the jungle hit her immediately, thick, heavy, filled with the sense of vegetation and earth. The simulation had begun. Maya wasted no time. The 30-minute head start was her only advantage, and she intended to use every second of it. She moved quickly, but carefully through the underbrush, her eyes scanning the terrain for useful features. The jungle floor was soft beneath her boots, damp with recent rainfall. Perfect for what she had in mind. After 15 minutes of steady progress, she found what she was looking for, a small clearing beside a slow-moving stream, the ground muddy and rich with organic matter. Maya knelt beside the water, dipping her fingers into the cool mud at the edge. Let's see how well your sensors track someone who doesn't exist, she murmured to herself as she began to apply the mud to her exposed skin. She worked methodically, covering her face, neck, and hands with the dark substance, creating a natural mask that would help disguise her heat signature. The mud would dry and crack, requiring reapplication. But it was a start. Next, she gathered fallen leaves and vines, weaving them into a loose covering that she could drape over herself when stationary. It wouldn't fool a direct visual inspection, but it would break up her human silhouette from a distance. With her basic camouflage prepared, Maya turned her attention to the terrain. The simulation area was vast, but not infinite. There would be boundaries, transition zones between the different biomes. Those transitions would be her allies, areas where the predator AI might have to recalibrate its hunting parameters. She moved deeper into the jungle, away from her entry point, listening to the artificial wildlife that populated the simulation. The sounds were varied and realistic: birds calling, insects buzzing, the occasional rustle of something moving through the undergrowth. The Academy's attention to detail was impressive. After another 10 minutes of careful movement, Maya heard the distant announcement that signaled the entry of the next group of cadets. Her head start was over, and now the real test would begin. She found a position on higher ground, nestled between the exposed roots of a massive simulated tree. From here, she had a partial view of one of the entry points without exposing herself. Sure enough, she soon spotted Rin and his twin brother Kor entering the jungle, their cloaking devices already activated. The only indication of their presence was a slight shimmer in the air, a distortion that would be virtually invisible if she hadn't been looking for it. Other cadets followed, some immediately activating their cloaking technology, others moving confidently into the jungle, relying on their species' natural advantages. Sarek was among the last to enter, his scaled skin already shifting color to match the surrounding foliage. Maya remained motionless, controlling her breathing as she had been taught by her father. "Breathe like the forest breathes," he had told her. Slow, steady, part of the whole. A new sound drew her attention, a low, pulsing hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The predator AI had been activated. The hunt had begun. Maya stayed in her position for another 20 minutes, watching as the other cadets dispersed throughout the jungle. Some moved with purpose toward the swampland to the east. Others headed for the highlands to the northwest. Each had their strategy, their preferred terrain. When she was certain no one was observing her position, Maya descended from her vantage point and began moving toward the swamp. Her plan was simple, but based on sound reasoning. The swamp would be avoided by many cadets due to its challenging terrain, and the mud and water would provide additional resources for camouflage and deception. She moved differently now, adopting a gait that broke the human pattern. Humans walked with a distinctive rhythm, a bipedal motion that stood out to tracking systems designed to identify prey. Maya had learned to disrupt this pattern, to move in ways that mimicked the irregular movements of forest animals. 3 quick steps, pause. 1 slow step, change direction. 2 medium steps. It was exhausting compared to normal walking, but it created a movement signature that was harder to categorize. As she neared the transition zone between jungle and swamp, Maya heard the first cry of a tagged cadet. The sound was distant, but clear. Someone had already been found by the predator AI, not even an hour into the simulation. The failure tone echoed through the simulated environment, a demoralizing reminder of the stakes. The swamp welcomed her with its distinct sensory profile. The air heavier, filled with the sense of stagnant water and decomposing vegetation. The ground became increasingly unstable, forcing her to test each step before committing her weight. It slowed her progress but also made her more deliberate, more attuned to her surroundings. Maya found a relatively solid patch of ground, near a cluster of gnarled trees rising from the murky water. The roots created a natural shelter, and the water around them was dark with organic matter. perfect for the next phase of her strategy. She carefully waded into the water, which reached just above her knees. The temperature regulation systems of the simulation made the water cool, but not uncomfortably cold. Maya began gathering handfuls of the dark, silty mud from the bottom, adding layers to her earlier camouflage. This mud was richer, with more organic material that would better mask her thermal signature. As she worked, she listened intently to the sounds of the swamp. The simulation included ambient noise generators that created a constant background of wildlife sounds. But Maya was listening for discrepancies. The absence of sound that might indicate the presence of the predator AI or another cadet. A subtle disturbance in the water about 30 meters away caught her attention. A slight ripple against the prevailing current, too regular to be natural. Maya slowly sank deeper into the water until only her head remained above the surface, her body concealed by the murky liquid and the additional coverage of floating vegetation she had gathered around herself. The ripple moved closer, and Maya could now discern the faint shimmer of a cloaking device. One of the advanced cadets was moving through the swamp, confidence evident in their direct path. Maya remained perfectly still, controlling even the rate of her breathing to minimize the disturbance to the water's surface around her. The shimmer passed within 10 meters of her position, completely unaware of her presence. Maya recognized the movement pattern. It was Kor, the more aggressive of the Proxima twins. His approach lacked the caution that the environment demanded, his reliance on technology evident in every movement. Once Kor had passed, Maya carefully extracted herself from the water. She had what she needed now, a thick layer of swamp mud covering her body, and a better understanding of how the cloaked cadets were operating in this environment. She spent the next hour establishing a series of false positions throughout a section of the swamp, places where she deliberately left signs of human presence. A footprint here, a broken reed there, a disturbed patch of mud that suggested someone had recently passed. Each sign was subtle, easily overlooked by an untrained observer, but clear to a tracking system designed to aggregate multiple indicators. These false trails all led away from her actual path, creating a web of misinformation that would force the predator AI to allocate resources to investigate multiple locations. It was a strategy born from understanding that the AI, for all its sophistication, still operated on probabilistic models. Give it enough conflicting data, and it would be forced to divide its attention. 2 hours into the simulation, the announcement came that the predator AI was entering its second phase. Maya had anticipated this moment and had positioned herself at the transition between the swamp and the highland plateau. The elevated terrain would provide better visibility, while the rocky ground would make tracking more challenging for the AI. As she began her ascent into the highlands, Maya heard more failure tones echoing through the simulation. 3 more cadets had been tagged and eliminated. The predator was becoming more effective as it learned from each encounter. The highland plateau offered a stark contrast to the dense vegetation of the jungle and the murky waters of the swamp. Here, the terrain was open, with scattered rock formations and sparse, tough vegetation. Cover was limited, making movement more dangerous, but also providing clearer lines of sight to spot approaching threats. Maya chose her path carefully, moving from one rock formation to another, using the natural shadows and the contours of the land to remain as concealed as possible. The mud covering her body had begun to dry and crack in the drier air of the highlands, so she supplemented it with dust from the rocky ground, creating a layer that better matched her new surroundings. From her elevated position, she could see parts of the jungle and swamp below. The simulation scale was impressive. It genuinely felt like a miniature ecosystem. In the distance, she spotted movement, a cadet running at full speed through the jungle, their panic evident in their erratic path. Moments later, a shadow seemed to detach itself from the canopy and descend upon the fleeing figure. Another failure tone sounded. The predator AI was becoming more aggressive, more confident in its hunting patterns. Maya knew she needed to adapt her strategy accordingly. She found a crevice between two large rock formations, a space just large enough for her to wedge herself into with her back against one surface and her feet braced against the other. It was uncomfortable but provided excellent concealment from most angles. From this position, she could observe a significant portion of the plateau while remaining virtually invisible. Time passed slowly as Maya conserved her energy. 3 hours into the simulation, and she had yet to directly encounter the Predator AI. That was a victory in itself. But she knew the true challenge was still to come. The night phase would bring new dangers, with the Predator's sensing capabilities enhanced, while visibility for the cadets would be severely reduced. A movement to her right caught her attention, a shimmer in the air that betrayed the presence of a cloaked cadet. This one moved more cautiously than Core had, clearly aware of the increased danger. As the figure drew closer, Maya recognized the movement pattern as belonging to Rin. He was methodically scanning the area, his cloaking device active, but showing signs of strain. Occasional flickers disrupted the camouflage effect, brief moments where his form became partially visible before the technology compensated. Maya remained motionless, relying on her natural camouflage and the shadows of her hiding place. Rin passed within 5 meters of her position without detecting her presence. It was a small victory, but one that reinforced her confidence in her approach. As Rin disappeared over the ridge, Maya heard something that made her freeze, a subtle clicking sound, rhythmic and mechanical. It was the Predator AI, moving along the plateau in a search pattern. The sound grew closer, and Maya pressed herself deeper into the crevice, controlling her breathing and remaining perfectly still. The clicking stopped directly above her hiding place. Maya could see nothing from her position, but she knew the Predator was there, its sensors scanning the area. Time seemed to stretch as she waited, every muscle tense with the effort of remaining motionless. Then the clicking resumed, moving away from her position. The Predator had failed to detect her. Maya allowed herself a small, silent exhale of relief. The 4-hour mark brought the announcement of the third phase of the simulation. Atmospheric conditions will now transition to nocturnal parameters, the system voice intoned. Predator AI is now operating with enhanced sensing capabilities. The light began to fade gradually, the simulated sun setting behind the artificial horizon. Darkness crept across the landscape, changing the dynamics of the game entirely. Maya knew that visual camouflage would become less effective now, while thermal signatures would become more prominent. She left her hiding place and began moving again, using the gathering darkness as cover. Her goal was to reach a specific type of terrain, a section of the highland plateau where hot springs created an area of elevated ambient temperature. She had noted it during her earlier reconnaissance, recognizing its potential value during the night phase. As she moved, Maya heard more failure tones. The darkness was claiming victims rapidly, the Predator AI exploiting its enhanced capabilities to track down the remaining cadets. She had to move faster, but without sacrificing caution. The hot springs area was visible from a distance, steam rising into the cool night air. As Maya approached, she noted with satisfaction that the thermal signature of the area was precisely what she had hoped for, a chaotic pattern of heat that would help mask her own body temperature. She waded carefully into one of the peripheral pools, where the water was warm but not dangerously hot. The mud covering her body began to loosen in the water, but that was part of her plan. She submerged herself up to her neck, allowing her body temperature to rise until it more closely matched the ambient temperature of the springs. From her position in the pool, Maya could observe the surrounding area while presenting a minimal profile. The steam provided additional visual cover, making her little more than a shadow among shadows. Time passed, marked by more failure tones as the Predator AI continued its relentless hunt. 5 hours into the simulation, and Maya estimated that fewer than a quarter of the original cadets remained. She had yet to see any sign of Sarek, which concerned her. The reptilian cadet was undoubtedly a skilled survivor. As if summoned by her thoughts, a disturbance in the steam about 20 meters away revealed Sarek's presence. He was moving rapidly, his scaled body adapting to the terrain with natural efficiency. But something was wrong. His movements were too rapid, too direct. He was being pursued. Moments later, the Predator AI appeared at the edge of the hot springs area. In the darkness, it was more visible than it had been during daylight. A sleek, humanoid form with sensor arrays, where a head would be on a biological entity. It moved with predatory grace, each step deliberate and purposeful. Maya remained motionless in her pool as Sarek attempted to evade the Predator, using the steam and the irregular terrain to break line of sight. It was a valiant effort, but ultimately futile. The Predator AI predicted his movement pattern and intercepted him as he tried to circle back toward the jungle. Another failure tone sounded. Now the Predator turned its attention to the hot springs area, its sensor arrays scanning methodically. Maya sank a little deeper into the water, leaving only her eyes and nose exposed. The thermal readings in the area would be confusing to the AI, but not indefinitely. It would eventually identify anomalies and investigate them. The Predator moved closer to Maya's position, stepping carefully into the shallow edges of the hot springs. Steam swirled around its artificial form as its sensors continued their scan. It was less than 10 meters away now, close enough that Maya could see the complex array of lenses and receptors that formed its sensing apparatus. Then, unexpectedly, a failure tone sounded from the direction of the jungle. The Predator's sensor array turned sharply toward the sound, its hunting protocol momentarily diverted by the confirmation of another successful tag. Maya used the distraction to slowly, silently move to the edge of her pool farthest from the Predator. The movement created only the slightest ripple in the water, indistinguishable from the natural currents created by the springs themselves. The Predator completed its scan of the immediate area and moved away, following the edge of the hot springs toward the source of the recent failure tone. Maya remained in place for several long minutes after it had gone, ensuring it had truly departed before extracting herself from the water. Her body was now free of most of the mud that had been her primary camouflage. But the night phase required different tactics anyway. She moved away from the hot springs, her wet clothing quickly becoming uncomfortably cold in the night air. The discomfort was a price worth paying for survival. 5.5 hours into the simulation, only 30 minutes remained. Maya knew that the final phase would be the most challenging. The Predator AI would become increasingly aggressive as the time limit approached, determined to eliminate as many remaining cadets as possible. A new sound filled the simulation chamber, a low, pulsing alarm that signaled the beginning of the final hunt. The Predator AI was now operating at maximum capability, all hunting protocols fully activated. Maya had positioned herself on the border between the highland plateau and the jungle, a transition zone that offered both cover and escape routes. She could hear the Predator moving through the jungle below, its mechanical clicks now accompanied by occasional high-pitched tones that seemed designed to flush out hiding prey. A sudden commotion about 100 meters away drew her attention. A shimmer in the air, one of the cloaked cadets was moving rapidly through the underbrush, clearly in full retreat. The Predator followed, its movements precise and relentless. The shimmer flickered and failed, revealing Rin's slender form as his cloaking device finally succumbed to the environmental stress. Without his technological advantage, Rin was quickly overtaken. Another failure tone, another cadet eliminated. Maya calculated that very few cadets could still be active in the simulation, perhaps only herself and a handful of others. The odds of surviving the remaining time were decreasing by the minute. She needed to make a decision, continue with her evasion strategy or try something different. The conventional approach would be to find the most secure hiding place possible and remain there until time expired. It was a defensive strategy, one that might work but also left her fate largely to chance. If the predator happened to search her hiding place, she would be found. Instead, Maya considered an alternative that went against every survival instinct: to move toward the extraction point located at the center of the simulation area. It was counterintuitive, perhaps even foolish. The extraction point would be heavily monitored by the Predator AI, as it represented the ultimate goal for all cadets. But that predictability might be turned to advantage. The AI would have established probabilities for cadet behavior, with the likelihood of a direct approach to the extraction point calculated as extremely low until the final minutes of the simulation. If she moved now, she might exploit a gap in the predator's hunting pattern. It was a gamble, but one based on understanding the psychology of both predator and prey. In natural systems, prey animals sometimes adopted unexpected strategies, moving toward danger rather than away from it. When conventional options were exhausted, Maya began moving deliberately toward the center of the simulation area, maintaining her irregular movement pattern, but progressing steadily. She used the terrain to her advantage, staying in shadows where possible, but not deviating from her general course. The sounds of the Predator AI grew more distant as she moved, confirming her theory that it was focusing its attention on the periphery of the simulation area, where cadets would logically be hiding. 20 minutes remained in the simulation. Maya reached the edge of a clearing that surrounded the extraction point, a simple, illuminated platform at the center of the simulation area. The clearing was deliberately designed to be difficult to cross undetected, with minimal cover and open lines of sight from all directions. Maya paused at the edge of the clearing, assessing her options. Direct approach was suicide. The open ground would leave her completely exposed. But waiting until the last minute to make a dash for the extraction point was equally dangerous, as that was precisely when the predator would expect desperate cadets to attempt it. She chose a third option, to circle the clearing, remaining just within the cover of the jungle, until she found the optimal approach vector. This took precious minutes, but Maya moved with purpose, each step bringing her closer to her goal. With 12 minutes remaining, Maya identified her best opportunity, a shallow depression that ran through part of the clearing, providing minimal but potentially sufficient cover for a low crawl approach. She would be exposed, but less so than with any other option. She began her advance, moving on her belly through the depression, using every contour of the ground to maintain the lowest possible profile. The extraction point grew slowly closer, the illuminated platform a beacon in the darkness. 10 minutes remaining. Maya was halfway across the clearing when she heard it, the mechanical clicking of the Predator AI, approaching rapidly from her right flank. It had detected her movement or, more likely, had begun its final sweep of the area surrounding the extraction point. Maya froze, pressing herself into the ground, trying to become one with the terrain. The clicking grew closer, then stopped. The predator was scanning, its sensors sweeping the area systematically. She had two choices: remain motionless and hope to avoid detection, or make a break for the extraction point. The former offered better odds of immediate survival, but left her vulnerable as time expired. The latter was risky, but offered the possibility of complete success. Maya chose the bolder option. In one fluid motion, she rose from her prone position and began running directly toward the extraction point, not crouching, not trying to minimize her profile, but standing fully upright and moving with deliberate, purposeful strides. The predator's reaction was immediate. It oriented toward her and began pursuit, its mechanical form moving with frightening speed. But Maya had created confusion through the unexpectedness of her action. The AI had been programmed to anticipate evasive movement, not direct confrontation. The extraction point was 30 meters away, then 20, then 10. The predator closed the distance rapidly, its superior speed undeniable. Maya could hear it directly behind her, the clicking sound now continuous as its targeting systems locked onto her. 5 meters to the extraction point. The predator was within arm's reach. 3 meters. Maya could feel the displacement of air as the predator's limb extended to tag her. 1 meter. Time seemed to slow as Maya launched herself toward the illuminated platform, her body horizontal in the air, stretching toward safety. Her hand made contact with the platform a fraction of a second before the predator's tag would have connected with her back. The simulation froze, all movement suspended as the system calculated the outcome. Then, instead of the failure tone that had become so familiar throughout the simulation, a different sound filled the chamber, the clear, resonant chime that signaled successful completion. Maya had survived. Not only survived, but reached the extraction point, achieving the highest possible score in the Predator avoidance game. The simulation dissolved around her, the environment fading to reveal the actual dimensions of the Academy's training chamber. Maya found herself kneeling on a simple platform, her heart racing, her body still covered in the remnants of mud and vegetation that had been her only defense against the Predator AI. Instructor Arthun stood at the edge of the chamber, his expression unreadable as his skin cycled through a series of colors. Behind him, the other cadets, those who had been eliminated from the simulation, watched with varying degrees of surprise and respect. Cadet Flint, Arthun's voice was carefully neutral. An unexpected outcome. Maya rose to her feet, standing tall despite her disheveled appearance. Not unexpected to me, Instructor, she replied, her voice steady. Arthun approached, his tall frame looming over her. You were classified as primitive class, he said, as if trying to reconcile this fact with her performance. Without technological augmentation, without species advantages. I had advantages, Maya countered. Just not the ones recognized by your classification system. A murmur ran through the assembled cadets. Sarek looked particularly displeased, his scaled skin flushing with a darker hue that indicated frustration or anger. Rin and Kor stood together, their identical faces showing similar expressions of disbelief. Explain, Arthun demanded. The Predator AI learns from each encounter, Maya said. It builds a model of prey behavior based on observed patterns. Most cadets relied on technology that created similar signatures, cloaking devices that bend light in predictable ways, movement patterns optimized for efficiency rather than evasion. They became readable to the AI because they were variations on a theme. She gestured to her mud-covered form. I presented a different pattern entirely. Thermal masking, through environmental adaptation. Movement patterns based on natural prey animals, rather than optimized humanoid locomotion. Decoy trails and false positions to create data confusion. And finally, behavioral unpredictability, moving toward danger rather than away from it when the probability models least expected it. Arthun was silent for a long moment. His skin shifting through shades of blue and green that Maya had learned indicated deep thought among his species. Finally, he spoke. The purpose of the Predator avoidance game is not merely to test survival against a hunting entity, he said. It is to identify cadets who can adapt, who can transcend the limitations of both their species and their technology, who can think beyond established parameters. He turned to address all the assembled cadets. Advanced technology failed many of you today. Environmental factors compromised cloaking effectiveness. Terrain conditions neutralized species advantages. In the field, on unexplored worlds, you cannot rely solely on your equipment or your natural abilities. You must be able to adapt when both fail you. Arthun's gaze returned to Maya. Cadet Flint has demonstrated this principle in the most effective way possible, by succeeding where those with ostensibly superior capabilities failed. The instructor's skin settled into a formal pattern of gold and white, the traditional coloration for ceremonial occasions among his species. It is therefore my recommendation that Cadet Flint be promoted directly to the Advanced Tactical Response Unit upon graduation, bypassing the standard assignment protocols. The announcement sent another ripple of surprise through the gathered cadets. The Advanced Tactical Response Unit was an elite group, typically accessible only to those with years of field experience after graduation. Direct assignment was nearly unprecedented. Maya stood straighter, acknowledging the honor with a simple nod. "Thank you, instructor. I accept the recommendation." As the formal conclusion of the examination was announced, and the cadets began to disperse, Rin approached Maya, his earlier condescension replaced by a more thoughtful expression. "Your approach was illuminating," he said, choosing his words carefully. "I would not have considered using the environment itself as a countermeasure to the Predator's sensing capabilities. Different perspectives lead to different solutions," Maya replied. "Technology is a powerful tool, but it's still just a tool. Understanding the fundamentals of predator-prey dynamics gives you options when technology fails." Rin nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is something to be learned from primitive techniques after all," he conceded. "Not primitive," Maya corrected him. "Fundamental. The difference matters." As Rin moved away, Sarek approached, his posture still radiating displeasure, but with an undercurrent of reluctant respect. "You changed the rules of the game, human," the reptilian cadet said, his sibilant voice low. "Not fair." Maya met his gaze steadily. "I didn't change any rules. I just played a different game than the one you thought we were playing. The Predator learned from each of us, adapting its strategy based on what it observed. I gave it something new to learn." Sarek's tongue flicked out briefly, a gesture that, among his species, indicated consideration rather than aggression. "Perhaps in next simulation, I try your methods. See if Reptilian can play human game." "It's not a human game," Maya said. "It's a survival game. The oldest one there is." As Maya finally left the simulation chamber, heading for the cadet quarters and the shower she desperately needed, she reflected on what had transpired. The Academy had classified her as primitive, had framed her lack of technological augmentation as a disadvantage. Yet that very classification had forced her to rely on skills and approaches that ultimately proved superior. In a training program designed to prepare specialists for the unknown challenges of unexplored worlds, adaptability was the true measure of potential. Maya had demonstrated that sometimes the oldest solutions, those based on the fundamental relationship between predator and prey, honed through millions of years of evolution, were still the most effective. As she washed away the mud that had been her only shield against the predator AI, Maya knew that she had done more than pass an examination. She had changed perceptions, challenged assumptions, and perhaps even begun to reshape the Academy's understanding of what constituted advanced survival capability. In the vastness of space, with countless worlds waiting to be explored, technology would inevitably encounter its limitations. When that happened, it would be the fundamental skills, the ability to read environments, to understand behavioral patterns, to adapt using the resources at hand, that would make the difference between survival and failure. Maya had proven that humans, despite being categorized as technologically primitive compared to other species, possessed these fundamental skills in abundance. It wasn't about the tools you carried. It was about how you thought, how you moved, how you became part of the environment rather than imposing yourself upon it. As she prepared for bed that night, Maya received a notification on her Academy terminal. Her official status had been updated, no longer classified as primitive class. Her new designation read simply, Environmental Adaptation Specialist. It was a small change, perhaps insignificant in the broader context of the Academy's bureaucracy, but it represented the beginning of a shift in thinking, an acknowledgement that different approaches had value, that diversity of method was as important as diversity of species in the Academy's mission. The next morning, as Maya entered the common area for breakfast, she noticed a subtle difference in how the other cadets regarded her. The dismissive glances had been replaced by more thoughtful observation. Several cadets from species she had rarely interacted with before nodded in acknowledgement as she passed. At her usual table, she found Rin and Kor waiting for her, the Proxima twins having claimed seats opposite her usual spot. It was an unexpected development. The twins typically kept to themselves or socialized exclusively with other technologically advanced cadets. "Flint," Rin greeted her as she sat down. "We've been discussing your performance yesterday." "Have you now?" Maya replied, keeping her tone neutral as she arranged her meal tray. Kor leaned forward, his elongated features intense. "Our cloaking devices failed in the swamp environment. The humidity and organic particulates in the air created interference patterns that the compensators couldn't handle." "That's not surprising," Maya said. "Most technology has environmental limitations." "Yes, but we've always relied on the technology to adapt to the environment," Rin said. "Your approach was the opposite. You adapted to the environment and used its properties to your advantage." Maya nodded, taking a bite of her breakfast before responding. "That's how life evolved on Earth. Adaptation rather than domination. Our technology followed a different path than many species, focusing on changing ourselves to suit our environment rather than changing our environment to suit ourselves. We find this perspective valuable," Kor said after a moment, "and potentially complementary to our own approach. We would like to propose an exchange of techniques." Maya raised an eyebrow. "What kind of exchange?" "We will teach you the fundamental principles behind our cloaking technology. Not just how to use it, but how it works," Rin offered. "In exchange, you will instruct us in your environmental adaptation methods." It was a generous offer, and an unexpected one. The Proxima were known for carefully guarding their technological knowledge, sharing it only with species they considered equals in scientific advancement. "Why the sudden interest in primitive techniques?" Maya asked, deliberately using the term they had previously applied to her methods. The twins exchanged a glance before Kor answered. "The predator avoidance game demonstrated a critical flaw in our approach. We have become too dependent on our technology, to the point where its failure leaves us vulnerable. This is unacceptable for exploration specialists. And," Rin added, "we have come to recognize that your methods are not primitive at all. They are sophisticated in their understanding of natural systems and behavioral dynamics, different from our approach, but no less advanced in their own way." Maya considered the offer. The knowledge of Proxima cloaking technology would be valuable, potentially giving her capabilities that few humans had access to. And sharing her own techniques might help bridge the gap between the technologically focused approach of the Academy and the more holistic methods she had been raised with. "I accept," she said finally. "But with one condition. We don't conduct this exchange in secret. We do it as part of a formal study group, open to any cadet who wishes to participate." The twins looked surprised. "You would share these techniques so freely?" Kor asked. "Knowledge works best when it's shared," Maya replied. "And the purpose of the Academy is to prepare all of us for the challenges of exploration. That happens more effectively when we learn from each other's strengths." Reluctantly, the twins agreed to her condition. By the end of the day, word had spread throughout the cadet quarters, and a list of participants for the newly formed Environmental Integration and Technological Adaptation Study Group had grown to include representatives from 12 different species. Instructor Arthur himself requested to observe the first session, his interest evident in the rapid color changes that rippled across his skin when he reviewed the study group's proposal. As Maya prepared for the initial meeting, organizing her thoughts on how best to communicate concepts that had been second nature to her since childhood, she reflected on the chain of events that had led to this moment. From being classified as primitive to becoming an instructor in techniques now recognized as valuable. The journey had been unexpected, but deeply satisfying. The Academy had been established to prepare specialists for the unknown challenges of unexplored worlds. In such environments, the ability to adapt, to use whatever resources were available, whether technological, biological, or environmental, would determine success or failure. Maya's performance in the predator avoidance game had demonstrated the value of an approach that integrated natural systems, rather than attempting to overcome them. In the vast, diverse galaxy they were preparing to explore, no single approach would be sufficient. The combination of advanced technology and fundamental environmental understanding would create specialists better equipped to face the unknown than either approach alone could produce. As cadets began to arrive for the first study group session, Maya saw curiosity in their expressions, a willingness to learn that transcended the species divides and technological classifications that had previously defined their interactions. Even Sarek was present, his scaled form looming near the back of the room, arms crossed but attention focused. "Welcome," Maya began, surveying the diverse group before her. "Today, we begin an exploration of integration, how to combine technological capabilities with environmental adaptation to create approaches that are more than the sum of their parts." She gestured to Rin and Kor, who stood nearby with the components of a basic cloaking device arranged for demonstration. "We'll begin with understanding both approaches separately, then work toward integration. The goal isn't to replace your existing techniques, but to supplement them with new options, to expand your toolkit for survival in unknown environments." As the session progressed, Maya observed the growing engagement of the cadets, their questions becoming more nuanced, their understanding deepening. What had begun as curiosity was transforming into genuine appreciation for perspectives different from their own. By the time the Academy's next major simulation was announced 3 weeks later, a complex scenario involving first contact protocols on an uncharted world, the impact of the study group was already evident. Cadets were incorporating elements of both technological and environmental approaches into their preparation, discussing hybrid strategies that would have been unthinkable before. The simulation itself proved to be a resounding success, with multiple teams demonstrating unprecedented adaptability in the face of changing conditions. Instructor Arthan's report specifically noted the improved performance metrics across all species classifications, attributing the improvement to the cross-disciplinary integration of diverse survival methodologies. For Maya, however, the true measure of success was more personal. It came in the form of a revised curriculum announcement from the Academy administration, beginning with the next intake of cadets. The classification system would be reorganized. No longer would cadets be categorized as advanced, standard, or primitive based on their technological capabilities or species characteristics. Instead, they would be evaluated on their adaptive potential, their ability to integrate different approaches, and their willingness to learn from perspectives unlike their own. The predator avoidance game remained a cornerstone of the final examination process, but with a significant modification. All cadets, regardless of species or technological proficiency, would be required to demonstrate both technological and environmental adaptation strategies during the simulation. As Maya reviewed these changes, Instructor Arthan approached her workstation, his skin displaying the formal patterns that indicated official Academy business. "Cadet Flint," he said, his tone formal, but with an undercurrent of respect that had been absent in their earlier interactions. "The Academy Command has reviewed your performance and contributions over the past month. They have authorized me to offer you a choice of assignments following graduation." Maya looked up, surprised. Cadets typically receive their assignments without input, based solely on their performance metrics and the needs of the exploration fleet. "What are the options?" she asked. "The first is as previously recommended. Direct assignment to the Advanced Tactical Response Unit as a field specialist," Arthan said. The second is a new opportunity, a position as training development specialist here at the Academy, focusing on the integration of environmental adaptation techniques into the core curriculum. The choice was unexpected, but significant. The field position would put her on the front lines of exploration, facing the unknown challenges of uncharted worlds directly. The Academy position would allow her to shape the training of future specialists, potentially influencing the approach of the entire program. "How long do I have to decide?" Maya asked. "The command requests your decision by the end of the week," Arthur replied. "But they also wish me to convey that, whichever path you choose, your contribution to the Academy's evolution is already secured. The changes to the classification system and curriculum are being formalized under the designation the Flint Protocol, in recognition of your role in their development." After Arthur departed, Maya sat quietly, considering the options before her. Either path represented an opportunity to continue what she had begun, the integration of different approaches to survival. The recognition that diversity of method was as valuable as diversity of technology or species. The field position would allow her to test and refine these integrated approaches in real-world situations, gathering data and experience that could further validate their effectiveness. The Academy position would enable her to directly shape the training of new cadets, ensuring that the principles of integration became foundational to the exploration program. Both paths had merit. Both represented a future where the artificial divisions between advanced and primitive had been replaced by a more holistic understanding of adaptive capability. As Maya left her workstation and headed toward the simulation chamber, where her study group was preparing for its next session, she felt a sense of satisfaction that transcended the question of her future assignment. The game had changed, not just the predator avoidance game, but the larger game of how the Academy approached the challenge of preparing specialists for the unknown. In the simulation chamber, cadets from a dozen species were engaged in a practice exercise, some working with advanced technology, others demonstrating environmental adaptation techniques, all sharing knowledge across the boundaries that had previously separated them. The change was visible, tangible, and profound. Maya joined a small group that was struggling with a particular camouflage technique, guiding them through the process of using environmental materials effectively. As she worked, she caught sight of Sarek demonstrating to a group of technologically focused cadets how to regulate their body temperature in changing environments, a natural ability of his species that he had previously kept to himself. The sight confirmed what Maya had hoped, that the changes weren't limited to curriculum or classification systems, but extended to the attitudes and behaviors of the cadets themselves. They were beginning to see each other not as representatives of more or less advanced species, but as individuals with unique capabilities and knowledge to share. In the vastness of space, with countless worlds waiting to be explored, this shift in perspective might prove as important as any technological advancement. The unknown challenges of uncharted planets would require all the tools, techniques, and perspectives they could bring to bear, not segregated by artificial classifications, but integrated into adaptive approaches that drew from the strengths of all. As the practice session continued, Maya moved among the cadets, offering guidance where needed, learning from their questions and observations. The predator-prey dynamic that had been the focus of the avoidance game had expanded into a broader understanding of environmental integration, of becoming part of systems rather than imposing upon them. It was, Maya reflected, perhaps the most fundamental lesson of survival, not to dominate or to hide, but to adapt, to integrate, to become part of something larger than oneself. In that integration lay strength, resilience, and the ability to face the unknown, not with fear, but with the confidence that came from a truly comprehensive approach to survival. The game had changed, and with it, the future of exploration itself. And Maya, regardless of which path she ultimately chose, would be part of that future, helping to shape an approach to the unknown that recognized the value of all perspectives, all techniques, all ways of understanding the complex systems of the universe they sought to explore. As the session drew to a close, Maya gathered the cadets for a final observation. "Remember," she said, "that what we're learning here isn't about technology versus nature, or advanced versus primitive. It's about integration, finding the connections between different approaches, and using them to create something stronger than either could be alone." She looked around at the diverse faces of the cadets, seeing in them the future of exploration, a future where artificial classifications had been replaced by genuine appreciation for the unique contributions of each species, each individual. "Out there," she continued, gesturing toward the simulated stars visible through the chamber's observation dome. "We'll face challenges we can't predict, in environments we can't fully prepare for. When that happens, it won't be our technology alone, or our natural abilities alone, that see us through. It will be our adaptability, our willingness to integrate different approaches, to see beyond our own perspectives, to become part of the systems we encounter rather than remaining separate from them." The cadets nodded, understanding evident in their expressions, regardless of the diverse physiologies that shaped them. They had moved beyond the competitive mindset that had dominated their earlier training, beyond the hierarchical thinking that had classified some approaches as advanced and others as primitive. They had begun to see the true complexity of survival in unknown environments, and the value of every technique, every perspective, in addressing that complexity. As the cadets dispersed, Maya remained in the simulation chamber, watching as the artificial stars wheeled slowly overhead. Somewhere out there were worlds waiting to be discovered, environments that would challenge all their assumptions and capabilities. When they reached those worlds, they would carry with them not just their technology or their natural abilities, but a new approach, one that recognized the value of integration, of adaptation, of becoming part of the environments they encountered rather than remaining separate from them. It was, Maya reflected, perhaps the most important lesson the Predator Avoidance game had taught them all, that survival in the face of the unknown required more than advanced technology or natural advantages. It required the wisdom to recognize that every approach had value, that every perspective offered insights, and that true adaptability came from integration rather than separation. As she finally left the simulation chamber, Maya carried that understanding with her, a foundation for whatever path she ultimately chose, and a legacy that would shape the Academy's approach to survival training for generations to come. The game had changed, and with it, the future of exploration itself.